Hi everybody, it's Pseudo, and it is MMO Buff Monday, and I'm kind of alone, but kind of not. So this is going to be a rather interesting episode. I am actually here to facilitate your enjoyment of the content that will be coming up upon the show. And of course, to bring you the news. Yes, Gazimov unfortunately is a busy bumblebee. I don't know when he will be back on Monday's show. I know that he is going to be joining us Friday for Cosmotronic, so you will be able to see him again. Hopefully, we'll be able to get Kai as well because she's finally getting her internet back. And hopefully, Mizpah will actually be around because as last time I checked, he was still traveling various countries. So, hi. Let's see. Recap of all the crazy things that are going on. Last Friday, I had Aiko on the Cosmotronic, and it ended up being like a 2 hour episode because our post show ended up going an hour long, and it is well worth the watch, so we actually decided to save it, which is not normal for us. Normally, our post shows involve us being post showy and then not, putting it up on YouTube. But this time, there was just so much discussion about everything from, PvE to PvP, the impact of the game developers' choices in WildStar, and it just so much had to go. So I was like, we'll keep it. Just this once. Remember that Wednesday, this coming up Wednesday, we're going to be building a deck in Hearthstone using the terms and things that we have been discussing in the previous episodes. If you haven't seen those yet, go watch Deck Design Part 1 and Part 2 and prep yourself for Part 3, which is basically everyone participating and helping me build a deck to kick Mizpah in the Watusi. That's a word you can use live, right? Watusi? Yeah. Then, this coming up Friday, hopefully we're going to learn all about the Redactineer, aka the Engineer. We're really excited about that. And as a reminder, next year, at the start of the year, we have the campfire starting, and I already have a lot of people contacting me about wanting to be in the campfire. Believe me, I am going to have as many people sitting by the campfire with me as possible because to me, it's a topic that needs a lot of discussion. Let's see. Are there any other things? Why, yes, there is. Swagzilla has things she wants to give away for the holidays, but in order to do so, you need to go to the MMOBuff.TV website, click on the link of the two guys who are standing there pointing at a package, and that just sounds really dodgy, but they're pointing at a package. Click on that, fill out the form, and let us know your best bits from the previous episodes that we have done so that I can build the top 3 list of each, and then we can have a end of the year special show, and I will randomly select 3 people to get a box of random swag. And when I say random swag, I mean random swag. It may contain all kinds of crazy things, and that is so worth it. So make certain you fill all of that information out. But other than that, it's time for the MMO news. Oh boy, Stout, that would be an interesting one. And hello, Jaredar. So, as much as we'd love to sit here, or at least I should say I'd love to sit here and just dive into all things WildStar related, or say Blizzard related, or, oh gee, pick your favorite MMO and discuss the news, something else has come to my attention, and I'm basically going to take the entire news segment and devote it to it. Now, some of you may have heard, some of you may not have heard, but there has been a document release from the Snowden document releases that actually deals specifically with gaming and the government's, various governments might I add, usage of spying in the MMO worlds and things like World of Warcraft and things like Call of Duty, Microsoft Flight Simulator, and various other games. And this has an interesting impact. Now, normally this is the kind of thing where I would just be like, just be aware that this has happened. However, with the type of audience that you guys are going to actually want to read this document. So I will be putting up, not right now, because I want you to pay attention to the awesomeness that's coming up, but I will be putting up a link for you to actually read the document in full. It is 82 pages long. It is full of some rather, I don't want to use the term interesting here because it's kind of terrifying the assumptions that are being made. for example, they talk a little bit about using Snort to sniff packets on a World of Warcraft connection. So that they could gather data about what was going on around them and then mine through it to find information out that helps lead to terrorist networks and things like that. And they use an application called Snort. Now, for those of you who have watched a lot of our previous shows and stuff, you understand that this is actually one area that is an expertise area for me. So when I speak on Snort, I actually am speaking of someone who's used it. Now, in this particular case, they talk specifically about gathering up the information that is passed around through the connection that you have to your MMO. Now, I just state MMO here. They use the term World of Warcraft, but they also talked about being in Second Life, and they talked about other games as well. So I haven't completely finished reading through everything, but this stuck out to me because the implication is that when you are connected to, say, World of Warcraft, even private chats that are happening around you that you don't see in your client are quote unquote being sent in your connection. That's the only way through using Snort that they could actually get and collect the packets like that, unless they actually put an application on the server that was receiving all of the communications, in which case then obviously it's going to be able to literally snort up every single packet that passes through its network interface card. Now, the dangerous side to this is the assumption that by, say, me just logging in and using Snort, I can kind of collect all the information and spy on people. That's not a reality. The reality is I'm only going to get what information is passed back and forth. Now, if in the design principles, we'll say Blizzard or Second Life or whoever else has made the design choice to have all information shared willy-nilly and it's only certain bits and pieces that get revealed to you through the UI, that's dangerous. But I don't think that's what's happening here. So at the same time, I'm reading this document going, how are they doing this? Especially when you have people like the president of Sony online, the presidents and people involved in Blizzard saying, we have no idea that this stuff was going on. So if they don't know that it's going on, then there's a real good chance that they didn't actually put Snort onto the servers that are collecting all these chat messages or anything else along those lines. So in this particular case, like I said, I haven't finished it. It is a really long document, and I've just gotten my hands on it earlier today. But it kind of made me a bit concerned because we're gamers, but at the same time, there's more going on here than meets the eye. So it's sort of like world inclusion of news. You know, learn a little bit about Snowden. If you didn't know anything about Snowden, maybe the name will tickle your brain and you'll go look him up. Learn a little bit about the fact that when communication is occurring between you and a server, information could be passed. What information that is, we don't always know. And that apparently governments out there, not just the United States government, but also the UK's version of the NSA, which is the G... Oh, good grief. Now I'm going to have to go quickly look it up because I want to get it just right as I scroll through absolutely. The GCHQ apparently were involved in decoding the WoW protocols and everything else that goes with it. So this is one of those, what? Kind of things that's going on. Now, I will end up probably writing a piece about this in a little bit more detail, kind of either saying how I feel it's possible that they could have done this or not, based on the knowledges that I have. But at the same time, I am going to make this document available for everybody to read because, honestly, you guys are not the kind of people who are going to sit there and just take what anyone says at face value. You guys dig deeper. This is why you like us. This is why we love you. And for you to dig deeper, you're going to have to read the document yourself. And believe me, this is something I really want to go into depth with people. So if you've got questions or you're not certain what certain terms mean, hit me up. We'll get into a huge discussion. It will be thrown up on Reddit, and the article, when I get to writing it, will be up, obviously, on the MMOBuff.TV website. So, conspiracy! Yeah, seriously. So, let's see. And yes, the dist, that is a wise assumption to make. At the same time, though, it's not always the reality. But, yeah, there are ways to secure yourself. There are ways to protect yourself. But at the same time, like I said, you guys are an analytical audience, so I'm going to give you the chance to analyze this document with me. Let's crowdsource it. Let's find out what's true and what's not. But, yeah. So, that is the news. And you may sit here going, but Josie, that was a really short news piece. Why, yes. Yes, it is a short news piece. It's a short news piece because we have a huge meat filler to our sandwich toppings and everything else that is the MMO Buff Monday show. This is where I start to go, I need to prepare the car. I need to get the flux capacitor. I need to get everything ready so that I can hit the appropriate speed to travel back in time. I really can't say the other one because it's kind of like copywritten or something, but anyway. So, tonight's show is all about the Holy Trinity in an MMO. Now, the Holy Trinity, by default, most people see it as tank, DPS, and healer. Tonight's show is all about the healer, and we have a special guest tonight. Our guest is the awesome TheHiveLeader. Although awesome is not in his title, I kind of am putting it in there. He's actually the TheHiveLeader, but I just call him the awesome TheHiveLeader. If you have not had a chance to view his healing video, you're about to get that chance. This is so funny. I am actually going to make it so that it's going to fit in here. And then I'm going to go down into the corner so you can watch me as I watch this video with you. So, hopefully you guys will enjoy this, and hopefully I set this up right, because this one was a little trickier to set up than my normal stuff. La 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 la. Ooh, what's that? That is a video, and here is where I mute myself and just press play.
So, you've decided to play a healer. Well, congratulations! You're joining an elite team of masochists who love being blamed, ridiculed, and shamed for absolutely everything that goes wrong in your group. If you've ever watched one of my videos, you probably know that I am one of the select few stupid enough to pick this class. And with the release of Final Fantasy XIV, we have a lot of new people playing MMOs. So today, I'm here to give a few lessons to those who are considering the role of healer. So follow me! You can't see it right now, but I'm leaving. Lesson number 1. It's your fault. This is the most important lesson to remember when choosing to play a healer. Uh-oh, it looks like your group just wiped. Let's examine why. Is the answer A, your DPS did not kill something fast enough? B, someone failed to follow the proper fight mechanics? C, the tank failed to keep proper aggro off the rest of the group? Or D, all of the above? The correct answer is E. It's your fault! Clearly, the group's health is at 0. It's your job to make sure that the group's health is not that way. Your fault! At this point, you will be unceremoniously kicked from the group and replaced like the cheap whore that you are. The faster you get used to this, the faster you can get to Lesson 2. Lesson 2. You're not a person! You're a tool, a dime a dozen. The game made you, the game can replace you. If you can't do it, someone else can and will. Unless someone is in need of a resurrect or wants an instant group queue, you are scum, and no one will ever let you forget it. Lesson 3. You speak a different language. Whether or not everyone in your group speaks the same language, they cannot understand you. Example, you say, "Hey guys, I would appreciate it if you wouldn't stand in the red circles. If you do, you're gonna die and I can't heal you." And this is what your group hears. Remember this, unless it's spoken by the tank or the DPS with the highest numbers, no one cares. Lesson 4. Ready checks don't apply to you. Example, the tank does a ready check to see if everyone is ready to fight the next big boss, but you're out of mana from that last big battle. Naturally, you click no. It will only take a few seconds for your mana to regenerate. Too bad! The tank's going in. Why did he go in when you obviously clicked no? Refer to Lesson 2. When the group inevitably wipes because you only had a sliver of mana to begin with, refer to Lesson 1. Lesson number 5. You're not a person! But wait, didn't I already say this? Yes, I did! Lesson number 6. You are a god. Remember, you hold the power to life, and thereby indirectly hold the power to death as well. Feel free to use this responsibility as loosely as possible. Tell your group this often. They're not listening anyway. Let someone die just to let them know you're serious. Make them fear you and beg for mercy each and every battle. Make them aware of what a petty and vengeful god you are. But what does this have to do with being a better healer? nothing! These lessons are here to help you deal with the massive amounts of you're going to deal with on just your first dungeon run. If you decide to run a second dungeon, congratulations! You've given up on having a soul. Now it's time to be a better healer. Tip number 1, unclutter. Once you get higher level, you may notice that you have action bars full of heal spells. These can only cause confusion and brain aneurysms. Simplify and get rid of that junk. Most of them are useless anyway, and were only put in the game to give the animator something to do. Tip number 2. Just remember this simple acronym. UBASAT. Use your biggest heal spells all the time. It's so simple a monkey could remember. Just say it with me. What was it again? UBASAT? Use your biggest heal spells all the time. Forget anything having to do with cast time, mana cost, situation. Numbers are all that matters. Everyone will be so impressed with how much you heal for, they won't care whether or not they're dead because you didn't heal them in time or ran out of mana. They might even be so impressed they'll forget about lesson number 1. Tip number 3. Know the order of importance. When healing, you cannot always save everyone. Sometimes you have to make a choice. Remember your priorities. First and foremost, you! Because f*** them. Your second priority is any player that may potentially be of romantic interest to you. It may be a man playing that female character, but let's face it, that's a risk you just can't take. After that, who really cares? Tip number 4. You don't only have to heal. Sometimes healing is just a bit too easy. Instead, why don't you add some extra DPS to that group? Sure, your damage is probably negligible compared to your DPS brethren, and sure, this may kill everyone in your group. But in that rare instance where you happen to out DPS someone else in the group, you can proceed to humiliate them to absolutely no end. In fact, add that person to your friends list and group with them as often as possible. Send them random messages just to remind them of that wonderful time. Tip number 5, survival of the fittest. Yes, it applies to healing as well. If you have a group member who constantly refuses to follow the rules, is always standing in those nasty red circles, or is an overall asshat, do not bother to heal them. God has selected them for extinction. Letting them live would only be encouraging them. With these lessons and tips in hand, you are now ready to take on the horrific task of healing in an MMO. And at the end of the day, when you start to feel like maybe you just can't take it anymore, remember the healer's motto. There's a time to take damage. There's a time to deal it. There's a time to ignore all else and do your best to heal it. Then there's a time to laugh while they all burn.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching. Do you want to stay updated with future videos? Then make sure to click that little subscribe button. You can also follow me on Twitter, the link is in the description below. And if you really want to help me out, make sure to share this video with anyone you think might enjoy it. If you want to watch some of my other videos, then you can click on them right here. You can also visit our website for more reviews of games, TV, movies, and more.
Yeah, so there you go. As you can tell, there is a reason why we turned to the TheHiveLeader, and we specifically said, dude, come talk to us about healing. Now, the importance of understanding that video comes from the fact that in the discussion with the TheHiveLeader, we do kind of bring up some topics that he's mentioned. Now, I do firmly agree with you, Stout Pint. I do believe that anyone who wants to be a healer should watch that video. As to whether they'll fully comprehend all the subtleties, I don't know. But the hope is that they will. But I'm going to let everyone know before I lead us into the meat of our show, where I actually travel in time and in space to summon a conversation that was had, that you guys understand that the TheHiveLeader is here. He is here to chat to you at the same time as you watch this. Also, you want to make certain that you are subscribed to him on YouTube, follow him on Twitter, go visit him, and if all goes well, you might be able to catch him occasionally posting something to MMOBuff.TV. Cheeky face. So, without further ado, I turn to you, my friends, my fellow community members, and those who love to look deep, and I say, welcome to the past, where I summon from a great distance and through great time, Mizpah and the TheHiveLeader. And yes, we will be discussing healing, because I think that's what we're supposed to do. I think.
Okay, folks, and hello. Hopefully this reel is now rolling, and we're coming to you with a little bit of a pre-recorded episode for your viewing pleasure. And of course, as usual, we're not by ourselves. You've already been speaking with Pseudo, but now we have a Hive leader joining us. Hive, say hello.
Hello, everyone.
And before we do anything else and dive into the meat of, well, both the Copenhagen edition of the show and the presence of your good self, perhaps you could take just 2 minutes and tell people a little bit about you and what it is that makes you tick and perhaps why it is we've got you here with us today.
Well, I am the Hive Leader. If you don't know me, I am a YouTuber who covers mostly MMOs in a humorous manner. But actually, despite the humor, I've been playing MMOs probably since their inception, back starting with Meridian 59, and then moving on to pretty much every major release and minor release that's ever come about for MMOs. And in pretty much all of those MMOs, I am a healer, hence why I am here. My Adventures of a Healer has caused me to put out a parody video, which Pseudo may have or may not have shown you at this point.
I will
but,
have.
Okay,
I will
well,
lead
then
into
there
the
you go.
show with it.
And there you go.
I have led into the show with it. Past present tense is going to be really confusing for me in this particular episode. Plus, I'm wearing a different t-shirt.
Oh, yeah.
And much more importantly, don't cross the streams whilst time traveling. However,
yes. Let's not mess with the timeline, everyone, please.
Ooh, that's a funny joke in a different manner. But go ahead.
And so that is why I am here. I have a lot of we'll not say great or brilliant ideas with healing, but I have a lot of things to say about healing. Hence why I'm here.
Indeed. So this one really is the first part of our Trinity series of shows. Now, a lot of you will know I, of course, run around doing DPS and not a lot else. Pseudo, of course, you've spanned the gamut of different player styles to the best of my knowledge. Yeah. But Hive, you are a healer archetype through and through. Whereas
I have to interrupt you here because you need to know that I am a healer above all other things. Yes, I may occasionally pick up a sword or put my fists up to tank, but I prefer healing. So Hive and I, yeah.
That's right.
And in this case, I will cross the streams. But yeah.
So really what we're looking at here is what is it that makes a healer? That's probably our start point. What's it all about? Why would someone want to heal? Healers, well, they just stand at the back, wiggle their fingers, and they're the people we moan to when the tank dies, right? That's how it works, isn't it, Hive? Or do you think there's something else going on with healers?
I'm going to let you take this, Hive, completely, because in all honesty, Mizpah's back for his first show in a while, and I already want to reach to the screen and slap him. But anyway...
Well, you know, the stereotype for healers is that we just stand in the back, we spam our one heal, and then, you know, when we fall asleep, that's when the tank dies, and that's when everybody gets mad at us. Not that sometimes isn't the case, but most of the time, that is not the case. I mean, people who want to heal... I know this is something you wanted to go into a bit, Mizpah, but, you know, there's personality types in real life that go with each class and each part of the Trinity. And I feel like healers typically tend to be a bit more of a person who's empathetic in real life. They want to help people. And that's kind of why I fell into the role of healer, is I just wanted to help my friends. And so there's so much more to healing than just standing there and spamming a heal button. So much more that's involved in being a good healer.
I mean, I totally buy into that. I mean, we poke fun, and we will at all the archetypes, DPS included. But if I put my sort of raid leader, guild leader hat on, the difference between a mediocre, a good, and a great healer is absolutely huge. But before we start diving into those differences, Pseudo, from your perspective, what's the most fundamental thing about the personality of a healer? Because, as Hive's alluding to, healers aren't front and center going, hey, look at me. You only really notice the healers when it goes wrong.
I actually disagree. Healers aren't the ones sitting there in the front line going, hey, look at me. That tends to be the people who like to spam the DPS meters. Most of the time, healers are completely and utterly ignored unless something has gone wrong.
That was my point entirely.
Well, that's basically what tends to be the case. For me, though, when it comes to being a healer, The healers that I have noticed that are, as you were saying, you've got your scale, but the ones that sit at the exceptional level are the healers who are willing to literally work with other people. You know, when you go into a raid environment, because that's usually one of the big ones, and I'll even throw PvP in there, which is an odd one that most people go, well, healing doesn't necessarily always work in PvP. I say it depends on the MMO. But, even in those cases, it's the ability to work with the others who are there. In a raid environment, you have other healers who are around you, and the last thing you want to do is you don't want to overdo spending your mana because that's a waste. You don't want to say overheal somebody unless that's part of actually what your mechanics are for your healing. But you want to listen to everything that everyone is saying. You're listening to the DPS because the moment the DPS make a call that, hey, we're going this way, the healers need to know, well, I'm standing here to watch the tank. These guys are going. I need to run over there with them. They have to be willing to literally shut up and listen. So I would actually state that listening is probably one of the number one things that healers do. We listen with our eyes and with our ears. Because if we're in a group and there's no like headsets on or something like that, and you're an LFG and you're a healer, you literally have to watch everything that's going on because it's not just the health bars, but if the tank is moving this way, the DPS is going this way, you need to find that in-between place that gives you the full radius to be able to heal everybody, even though nobody's talking to anybody else. So you are constantly having to pay attention to everything that's going on. So listening right up there for me as one of the biggest skills.
I think
Yes.
so. Listening, awareness, positioning,
Mm-hmm.
all things that are really key. I think to a lot of archetypes, but certainly to healing. One thing was interesting though that I pick up from something you're both saying, and that is the interaction with others. Now, looking at the notes we have here as well, there's a reference to perhaps to healers sometimes taking the can for things that really aren't down to healing. And if I put my raid leader hat on, one of the big things I look for a healing class lead is someone who can say, well, actually, something went wrong because of the healing, or something went wrong because the inbound damage is just too great. It can't be healed through. Or, something else needs to mechanically change. So I'm going to make the supposition that perhaps more so than some other classes, a healer really needs to understand all of the mechanics that are actually going on to be able to analyze the whats, the whys, and the wherefores. So, Hive, if you agree that that's the case, or if you don't, how does a healer put themselves in a position to do that?
Oh, no, I totally agree with you on that. Healing is kind of just a very big analytical role as well. It does require you know pretty much every position of the fight. Typically, when I'm grouping with a bunch of strangers, you have to, if you're grouping with a bunch of strangers, you're doing a pickup group or something like that, you have to explain the dungeon fights to everybody in the room. And usually the healer is the best person for that because they know exactly what needs to be done to not die. So, you're telling the DPS, don't stand in the red circles. You can stand in the blue circles, they're fine, but don't stand in the red circles. The tank, make sure that the boss is turned away from the group so they don't do cone damage. Everything like that. The healer is the person that needs to know every part of the fight, and especially every role. And again, I will be the first to admit, if something is not healable, if I can't heal it, if it just, I'm not doing well enough, I'll be the first to admit, okay, I'm just doing a bad job. I have my off days where I'm just not healing well, or I'm not getting out of red circles, or something like that. I can't do it. But I'm also the person who would say, tank, do you have any better armor? Do you have something with better fire resistance? Again, it's the analytical role that I think healers need to take.
I think to add on top of that, it's not just the analytical side of being aware of everything, but even in pickup groups, I tend to find that the healers usually are the ones who are already giving the information out. They don't sit there and wait for people to say, I know this fight. It's usually the healers who it's almost like the healers have macros. This is what I notice when I'm DPSing. It's like all of a sudden I join a pickup group and the healer has already gone, okay, in this fight, don't do this. And you're like, okay, thanks. They're already taking that step up. But to go further into the analytical side of things, it's not just the awareness of all the fights, it's also the awareness of your own individual abilities. Now, you're dead on. You have to know how much a tank can take damage-wise. One of the best healers I have ever healed next to was very, very well known for healing one specific tank. And in this particular case, I'm talking 10 mans because at the time that's where I happened to be at, was in 10 mans. And one of our tanks had one specific healer, and her comments were usually on the lines of, oh, I know exactly how much damage he can take. I know exactly how much damage he can take and what's going to income. I know his spike levels. I know when his health is going to drop, so I already know what spell to have ready, and I can let him drop to 1 health. And she did actually let him do that because she proved she could do it, kind of a thing, on more than one occasion. And just let him spike down and then got him right back up within the blink of an eye, and that we never wiped. But being aware of, in a raid environment, if you're running with a pickup group, it's kind of hard to tell. But if you're running in a raid or a group that is consistently running together, healers will start to understand. In this fight, I know the spike's going to do this to him, especially after they've picked up the latest shield or what have you. They can notice, just visually as well as through the flow of the fight, the amount of damage that's going to income from something. So you become more aware of that as well. And you can make comments like, not going to be able to make this. This is not, I'm not either geared right for it yet, or I don't have my rotation down right, or I'm not triggering what I need. I need to go back to the drawing board. Having the ability to say that is also very important.
Okay, so we've dived a little bit into some raiding stuff there, but let's go into some of these core mechanics. And we have a number of notes here. Now, some of this stuff is going to be really obvious MMO 101, but in other cases there'll be a few more subtleties there, and particularly for those that have never tried to heal. Let's throw some of this stuff out there. So, the comment's been made. You've got to know your skills. You've got to know their effects, primary, secondary, alternative. You've got to know the environment, the fight, specifics. But there's a core that goes under that, and that core I'm going to suggest spans many, many games. Not all, but a lot. So let's pick up on some of those things. So Hive, mana cost. Nice simple one to start with. What is it?
Yes.
Why is it important?
Oh, God. I make a joke in my parody video of use your biggest heal spells all the time. That is usually a bad idea, namely because mana cost. In games of old, mana cost was usually a big deal. There was no way to easily regenerate your mana during battle or anything like that. So mana cost, and I guess even in games of today, it's still a big deal. You have to watch out for using your biggest heals usually cost way more mana than anything else. The last thing you want to do is run out. So a lot with knowing your fight and knowing your tank, knowing how much they can tank, you also need to know how much your spells heal for, and that involves mana cost. So if you can throw in a smaller heal that costs less mana, and you know your tank isn't going to die immediately, so that you can prepare for that bigger mana cost spell, that's usually the best way to go.
I have to agree completely there.
And I'm going to throw something else out there, which you may put a different term onto, of course, but there's one thing just saying, well, I can hit this button and it will cost me 100 mana, and I've got 1,000 mana, so I know that I can hit this button, every so often, and I regen. But also you've got the idea of your mana expenditure over time. You used to run into things like downranking. You used to, there's a number of strategies, such as rotations. There's a lot of things you can do, but could you perhaps touch on the difference between burst healing and sustained healing?
Yes.
Before I let you answer that, I want to comment on what you were just starting that entire section out with. I tend to go by the philosophy, and this has always been, at least with me, with mana conservation. If I have more mana percentage-wise than a boss has health, there's usually a good chance I can guarantee will survive it. That tends to be how it works. I say tends to because there are some fights that are specifically designed to make you drain your mana like you wouldn't believe. It depends. It really does depend. It depends on the type of healer you are, and also what class you are. But there are some fights where if your healer has like 50% mana and the boss has like 30% health, there's probably a good chance they will be able to heal through whatever's coming next. So I point that out there because some people use that as a gauge. It's not always an accurate one, but it's one that can sometimes help to decide whether people are on the right track. But go ahead. Go ahead, Hive.
Okay. I would say, there's burst healing, which it works in a way depending on your fight. There's a lot of bosses that do a lot of burst damage that, they don't sit there and do a whole bunch of damage until suddenly, boom, all your group is at half health. You have to burst damage. You have to burst heal. You have to get everybody's health up because that skill is coming again, and your group's going to die. But most fights require sustained healing. Your tank's taking 10% damage usually every few seconds. You have to maintain their health up with either heal over time spells, which, by the way, are some of the most underrated heals ever. people, if you're not using heal over times, please use heal over times. I can't stress it enough. Um, because most people think, oh, it only ticks for 195 heal for every over 30 seconds. Yeah, but that adds up to 10,000 when your big spell only heals for 1,200 and costs double the mana. Come on, just anyway, enough rant.
No, I get behind that rant. I know so many people who are all like, must use the big, cast spell that doesn't have a dot because then, or I should say a hot, because then I know exactly how much health is coming. Hots.
Raid leader perspective, I'm very quick to complain if I don't see hots on things.
I love me my hots.
Also, by the way, click on the light well. Anyway.
Yeah! What is up with that?
One topic at a time. We'll come back to the mysteries of the light well.
Yes.
Or the mushroom.
So really, healing over time is most definitely probably the most important aspect of a healer, knowing how to conservate your mana, your cast times, to make sure that you can heal all the way throughout a battle. You don't want to just blow all your healing at the beginning of the fight and then have to regenerate for the middle and then try to burst heal to the end. You'll never make it.
Okay, so we've got this wonderful fight going on, and from my perspective, you tend to run into certain mechanics a lot of the time, and let's touch on raiding, because we can illustrate a little more there, I think. And the WoW paradigm is, of course, one that a lot of people are actually used to. But healers have certain mechanics, bosses tend to have certain mechanics, and they often tend to go together. There's a synergy between, certain patterns of behavior. So you're going to see things like spike damage. So spike damage being this large sudden influx upon the tank or even upon the whole group. So you're standing there healing Hive, you're 50% of the way through a fight, a huge meteor crashes on the ground. You're the only healer left, by the way, and there are, let me see, 10 people in the fight. You're the one healer, there's one tank, there's 8 DPS, and all of a sudden, everyone's on less than 50% health. What do?
You save the tank, you save yourself, and then you start saving people based on, I would hate to say it, not DPS meters per se, but probably utility. You've got people who are, support classes who can also help healing, but basically it's you have to save the tank, otherwise everyone's going to die. So there becomes a ladder of importance, I would say, where you've got your tank, then you've got you. Because without either of you, everyone's going to die, especially if you're the only healer.
And that's a really good point, by the way. The amount of times in Raid I've seen healers die because they're trying to heal a DPS.
Yes.
The thing is, for me, in a situation like that, my first response is usually, you guys who are DPS are on your own to start. So if you need to step off and bandage, step off and bandage. If you need to eat that Warlock Healthstone, eat it. If you need to eat that health pot, eat it. You're on your own because I need to keep the tank up. I need to keep myself up, and then I'll worry about you. And I think in your case, Hive, you're looking at the ladder of importance, not necessarily the quote-unquote the person with the highest DPS, the utility. For me, I usually go after the one I know is going to avoid the stuff on the ground or the other stuff so that I know for a fact that they're going to be alive, because dead DPS does no DPS. End of story. So someone may be quote-unquote 7th or 8th on the DPS charts, but I know they avoid the bad stuff. So they're likely going to get a bit more of a heal from me than, say, somebody who I know is going to be the quote-unquote risk taker. It depends on what percentage we're at in the fight at that point in time, but yeah. I love playing Triage. Triage is great as a healer. To quote the Hive, you are God. And Triage is amazing.
And knowing your group, making smart decisions based on what you're actually after, which actually is an outcome in a given scenario. You're after a fight outcome. And if you're really making smart decisions, to me, that your ladder of importance choices are different every fight based on the circumstances. So I think we've thrown a great concept out there. Is there anything else to put in on a ladder of importance before we move on, Hive?
No, I agree with Pseudo a great deal on that. Again, if you know, granted, you may be top of the DPS charts, but if you're standing in cones to get there, if you're standing in red circles, if the boss is doing an AoE damage and you're just standing there like, look at me, I got top DPS, yeah. Congratulations, I'm going to let you die.
Oh, I won't even hesitate. I will happily let you die and tell you as you are dying that that was my choice. Because I would rather you stay alive by playing smart than by playing the meters. So,
So
I'm harsh. Just a little bit.
we've got our healer. He's made some smart decisions. There's only 3 DPS dead. We're fine. And the tank's still alive, and you're still alive, and what else are you thinking about during this fight? What is the mental cycle, the checklist that a good healer should be going through in their head every few seconds, or whatever the time period actually is?
Out of curiosity, Hive, I've asked this of other healers, and I kind of get similar responses, so I'm going to ask you specifically, because your heroes are healing rep. When you are healing a boss battle, not necessarily trash, but a boss battle, do you hit what is known as the zone? Where, like, everything else shuts off and you are so focused that, like, your reaction kind of, you sort of go into this proper, I guess you could say, space in your brain that is different than if you were just, say, chatting to people?
Oh, definitely.
Healer space. Okay.
Yes.
All right, so this seems to be the thing, and I bring this up because you're asking what is it that a healer is thinking about? What is, what should be in their checklist of priorities? When I hit healer space, which is a really weird terminology, but it's you go so focused that you are completely aware of exactly what spell you need to cast next. You're aware of what damage is coming where. You know exactly where you need to stand. It's no longer a matter of thinking. It's this state of literally
Now,
being. You are of
now
the moment. It's really hard to
I'm
explain.
going to strongly contend that one. I actually see that as a function of concentration. The
Possibly.
same thing can happen to a tank, the same thing can happen to a DPS, the same thing can happen to a racing driver on a racetrack. And what you're actually
Possibly.
doing, in my mind, from a cognitive perspective, is you're shifting a lot of things from mental foreground to subconscious processes. But they're actually still happening.
Oh, yeah.
And if you've trained and drilled mentally certain things, those same things to me are going to be reflected in your subconscious decision making. It's just obviously not so apparent, hence the term subconscious. So,
It
again,
is
feel
mentally
free to
draining.
agree or disagree. um, but I want to know what that loop is. I mean, I know as a raid leader, I'm going through about 20 things in a constant cycle in the back of my head whilst looking for other things to react to. I'm sure healers must be doing something similar. So if you're trying to say to someone, here's healer 101,
Okay.
what are the things you're going to keep thinking of? And then when you finish thinking of them, think of them some more. What
Yeah.
are they?
Strangely enough, it's a scheduling thing almost. You schedule your rotations and everything based off your heal over times. So if your heal over time goes for 15 seconds, that's how often you're checking everything and thinking, okay, every 15 seconds I have to look at the side of the screen that has the group health on it, your group's health, their buffs, their dots, whatever they've got on them. You always have to be, well, honestly, you're never looking at the screen. I don't know what half my spell effects look like because I've never seen them. I've looked at my entire focus is on the side of the screen with my group's health. And every 15
There's some really
seconds,
good
I'm
videos
looking
on
at.
YouTube. I think you should watch Hive. They've got lots of spell effects on.
Oh yeah, I'll have to take a look at those.
Sorry, carry on.
The thing is, I completely agree with him. I think it depends on the game. There are some games where you spend more time playing the UI mini game, to quote a particular game that has recently come out or will be coming out soon, that you never actually see your spell effects. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead. Your checklisting.
Yeah. So your
Your scheduling.
checklisting. Yeah, you're scheduling essentially. So every 15 seconds, you're running down your list of people. So I always try to move my people in order of importance. Essentially, tank, me, then the DPS down below that, and I'm clicking on each one of them down below, and I'm just going heal over time, 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 and then checking for dots, checking for what their health currently is at, and it's an awareness issue of, okay, the last time I went down this list, this guy's health was at half, now it's at a quarter, I probably need to throw him a heal. But their health was at half, and now it's at more like 5/8. Okay, he's getting healed by heal over time. He's not taking damage. We're okay. So it's and also, there's a whole lot of support skills that healers have. So if something is going wrong, where people's health are not staying up, even if you're throwing them heals, you have to start looking at what you can do differently as a healer. Do you have CCs? Do you have instant heals that you need to start casting? Do you have group heals that you need to start casting? Yeah, you need to start dispelling. You need to start popping your cooldowns. You have cast time reducers, mana cost reducers. Increase your healing by 50%.
Yeah.
Do you need to start popping those? Basically, you just have to every 15 seconds you move down that list, or whatever your heal over time is. That's what you need to do.
For me, I would add to that the fact that you're not only looking at the schedule, and I completely agree with Hive, you've got your order of importance, you've got your HOTS that you're going to base everything off of, but then there's also the cooldown. If I know for a fact that I have a specific spell that has X cooldown, I know that I can get X amount of other spells into this cooldown. And I need to know, am I using that to actually do something to the people in my checklist of priority? Or am I not? Or am I actually, like for example, with the way they've modified priests, am I actually going to be swapping chakras, which is not always the thing you would think about, but am I actually going to be swapping to a different type of heal style specifically for a certain part of a fight? And if so, I need to know that that cooldown has something going on there too. So it's not just the HOTS you're paying attention to, it's your ability cooldowns. Am I blowing that particular, like you say, mana saving spell at that moment in time, or am I saving it for a little bit later down? Am I actually going to use the trinket now, or am I using it later? Being able to make those judgment calls on top of your HOTS are going, you're doing your checklist, you're making sure people's healths are okay, you're kind of going through the triage of everything, but making the correct decision as to what to do with what your actual abilities are based on those cooldowns as well is incredibly important. I almost have in my brain my own UI, and it keeps track of like a rhythm. I have to heal with music, and there are certain styles of music that fit certain types of healing for me. And when I find a music or a style that fits my specific type of healing, I almost keep a rhythmic beat going, almost like a heartbeat in my brain, so I know after a certain amount of bars, this is an ability that I need to work in somehow, or I know that this is going to be coming off of a cooldown, or I know that this is going to be happening. If I don't have music playing, I actually keep this sort of rhythm going with my foot. So there's different ways to make use of it. For me, it's my own style, but everyone does it differently. What do you do, Hive?
I was going to completely agree with that. Healing, especially nowadays,
Yay!
was is a lot like playing a game of Guitar Hero. If you ever play Guitar Hero, it's you're hitting the right notes at the right time. You're like, okay, I've got the top person, the middle bottom person, now the middle, now the middle two, then the top again, and then bottom, and then okay, there you go. So
Yeah.
I can completely agree with that. If you can find a good piece of music to, maybe some old school '80s metal or something.
And
It
now you
depends.
know why Pseudo has Backstreet Boys on her playlist. It's nothing
Oh,
to do with musical taste.
I will
It's
have
simply
you
it's
know.
a good song to heal to.
I will have you know, I only have one of their songs on my playlist. Thank you very much. However, if you really want to get technical, my priest healing is done to Eiffel 65. Okay? My druid healing is done to dubstep because it stays at 140.
see, I was gonna go with Chumbawamba, but
Chumbawamba could work really, really well for when I play a controller class of some kind. But I'm musically
There you go.
inspired by everything.
Music to heal by. The album coming out soon. Not
Oh.
available in any stores.
not at all.
Not at all. The thing is,
Put
once
me
you
on
get
the-
to a certain rhythm, though, when you get really used to it, I mean, when I start learning a new heal style or a new heal class, or they've changed something and you have to go back and relearn everything, I have to go back and refine my rhythm. But once you find it, then you can change your music and listen to anything you want because it's built into you at that point, which is like you were saying with that heal space, it's now the subconscious that's now actively working. Everything else in my brain clears, which keeps me prepared for reaction to a call from a raid leader like, just wipe. Or let everybody die, or let everybody die but you and the tank so that we can see what happens here. The directionary stuff occurs.
Okay, I'm going to do something a little unscripted now and put you on the spot, Hive. It's all these musical references have given me an idea. So, I want to move on in just a moment and talk briefly about some different games and where they do particularly good or bad things for healing and healing classes. But I'd like people to take away, if you will, the top 5 most important traits, awarenesses, skills, whatever they might be, that a healer really should learn, ingrain, and work on to try and become a better healer. So, putting you firmly on the spot, we're going to do the healing countdown. So, Healing Hive a moment or two before, we're going to say, congratulations, viewers, and welcome to the Top 5 Healing Countdown. And new in this week at number 5, coming straight from the Hive, it is...
Number 5 would be cast times. Know your cast times. Really, if you know that burst damage is coming, cast a faster spell. Don't cast something slow. Don't try to cast something big. Oh, burst damage is coming. I gotta start casting my big heal. Well, guess what? Your big heal takes 3 seconds to cast. Your guy's gonna be dead by then. So number 5, cast times.
And on the topic of timing and speed, we're moving swiftly on to the heady heights of number 4. And what are we going to find behind door number 4?
Number 4. The good healers know how to use CC. Crowd control, people. Vitally important. If you, as a healer, have crowd control, use it. It is sorely overlooked. An extra person an extra enemy off the field means less healing for you. Vitally important. CC.
Indeed, 2's company and 3 is a crowd, which brings us on to number 3.
Number 3. That would be, again, know your order of importance. Don't spend time healing people who are just going to die. Do not heal those people who stand in red circles. Do not heal those people who like to pull aggro because they want to be top DPS. Also, don't really stand for tanks who don't hold aggro. If they're not holding aggro, there's no point in healing them. Heal somebody who is.
I hate to say it, but he's right. I can't tell you how many times I've healed the DPS because they were going to be the ones pulling the aggro. And I knew that I could keep them up, and they would keep it off of me, and I wouldn't have to heal tank. I can't to tell you.
Sadly, this is true. My wife, I was going to say my wife plays DPS, and half the time when the tank doesn't pull aggro, she's the one who is, so I'm having to heal her. And it's not her fault, because I know she is a good DPS. Anyway, continue.
Smart man.
That gives us the order of importance. And the order is indeed important, because after 5 comes 4, and 4 comes 3, and 3 comes 2, and the answer to number 2 is...
The answer to number 2. Okay, hold on, I gotta think. Damn you for putting me on the spot. I would actually say the number 2 would be to know your enemy, and that means making sure that you're not the one being stupid. Make sure that you're not the one standing in circles. Make sure you're not the one who's pulling aggro by overhealing. That is a major problem with healers, is overhealing and pulling aggro yourself. So make sure that you're not the dumb one.
And sadly, I have no buttons with me to play background music while I do this, but we've been through 5, 4, 3, and 2, and that only leaves us one thing left. It is the pinnacle of the epitome of a great healer. It is the most important skill they need to take with them every time they travel. They're going to carry it as hand luggage, because they never want to land without it. The one skill that all healers everywhere need. It must be...
The number 1 would be, as I've already mentioned before, heal over time. Use it. People do not use it enough, and it's sadly overlooked. And also, I'm going to add in, runner-up, know your cooldowns, know how to use them effectively. Lots of people blow them way too early, lots of people don't blow them at all. Use them effectively, make macros if you have to. Just use your cooldowns.
And I would add in a 0.5, or I should say a partridge in the pear tree, the pinnacle, the star that sits on top of all of those lovely skills. Love healing.
Mm-hmm.
If you do not find healing enjoyable, if you are not passionate about figuring out what you need to do next, if you're not passionate about that hot, if you're not passionate about getting your actual triage done well, you're not going to make a good healer. You could be as
Yes.
skilled as the next person, but that person who has the passion will bring something extra to the table when push comes to shove, when the fan gets hit with stuff that nobody likes to have the fan hit with. If you don't love it, nothing else we've said is going to make a bit of difference to you.
I would strongly agree with that. There is a sense of accomplishment you should get from healing that really cannot be matched. If you heal through a massive raid battle, you know, and everybody is,
Yeah.
almost dead, because maybe you've messed up, but or the fight's just hard and everybody's almost dead, but the fight finally finishes, you should have a sense of accomplishment that cannot be found anywhere else.
Not replicated, not duplicated, not bought at the local convenience store.
Exactly. I remember the first time we downed Wrath of the Lich King in World of Warcraft, and at that point, that was just one of the biggest, greatest moments in my gaming life. I would even say in my personal life, but my wife might hit me. So I would definitely say, and hopefully this isn't saved for when my kids are older. They might hit me as well. I place defeating the Lich King right above your birth. Sorry. Didn't make the cut.
I'll be sure to find a suitable way to package that up and send it to them at some point in the future, Hive. Don't worry, we'll save your thoughts for
highlight.
posterity.
I go highlight right there. Oh, man. No, see, I'd have to completely agree with the Hive, though. There is this... I have DPS raids. I have tanked raids. I have healed them. There is something about the healing style that when you take the Trinity out of a game, it hurts me. I don't feel as... I wouldn't say the word empowered, but I don't feel that sense of being that you get with being a healer. So when it comes to the Trinity, kind of pulling us full circle to what we're actually talking about, we're talking about one of the Trinity. When the Trinity is removed from a game, there's a good purpose for it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I appreciate Guild Wars 2 for a lot of the things they do, but when you put the Trinity in and someone actually has the ability to be a healer and be all that they can be as a healer, there is something almost magical about the moment when a boss goes down and you made that happen. Whether it means that everyone else is dead except for you and the tank, or as it happened in one of my 25-man raids, everyone was dead except for the healer, and the healer frost-shocked and killed the boss, which was an accomplishment unto its own self. There is something about that accomplishment that just can't be gotten in DPS or in tanking. It's only through healing.
I'd have to say I think there's equivalence. I mean,
Oh, there's
certainly,
going to be different ones. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that you DPS can never get a enjoyment. That's not what I'm saying. But there's a different sense. There's something addicting about healing.
But I completely agree. You have to be in love with what you're doing to be as good at it as you possibly can be.
Absolutely.
And that probably brings us on to the last topic, because the clock is ticking, and I know this is just the magical recorded segment.
Yes, I get to come back in a different T-shirt.
Let's touch briefly on the gamut of games that are out there. Who's done a good job in MMO terms about providing an environment in which healers want to heal? Who's done a bad job? Who's brought things that are new and exciting to the table?
Okay.
So, no holds barred, Hive. Your thoughts?
I've got a lot to say about this. I recently did a video called the Top 10 11 MMOs, and a lot of them my top ones involved games that have good healing involved. Rift, I feel like, has done a great job with healing classes where you can pick not only shield healing, but you can pick healing through doing damage. I call it leech healing. So you do damage and return that to the group. You can do heal over time. You can do burst heals, or you can do a combination of all of them. And you can really mix and match and find exactly what you're looking for. There's lots of side effects that each skill will have. The secret world is also very much the same way. You can do heal over times. You can do burst healing. You can do leech healing. Again,
Bless you.
really strong ones. I'm going to receive a lot of heat for this. A game I feel like does a really bad job with making healers so special has got to be Final Fantasy XIV. Every healer is like every other healer. I'm sorry, but if you pick a white mage, you're just like every other white mage. I'm sorry, you have no skills that are different. Every white mage is exactly the same. It hurts me to say that.
And according to you, Hive, that's not all white.
No, that's
God,
ugh.
the
I had to
puns.
get one. I'm
We've
sorry.
had almost a week without puns. Actually, no, we have had a week without puns, and now the puns are back.
That was painful. That hurt. Oh god.
Now,
But yes, that's what I would say.
I want to
Okay, we've
ask
had
you
a-
a question, Mizpah, and I'm going to completely interrupt you on this one. Because you are asking Hive a lot of questions about healing. You've asked me quite a few questions about healing. It's obvious that both Hive and I are incredibly passionate about healing in general. Why don't you heal?
Actually, I have healed a little bit, but
No, I
I
mean
don't
in
know
a
healing to
raid
the
environment.
degree. Okay, a couple of reasons. First of all, my passion is largely to do with raid leading and strategy in fights. I love and I adore DPS, um, but I love raid leading even more. Um, my role where I can stand getting an overview of the fight becomes quite important to me. Um, I have performed all three roles whilst raid leading. I would say that the level of focus required to heal in a 40-man environment, say, whilst trying to raid lead, that's interesting. It can be done, um, but it doesn't leave enough focus left to attend to the healing. Frankly, you can have a DPS running at 95% as opposed to 100% because they're multitasking like crazy, and it will have a certain impact on the fight, and you can make that as a conscious choice. I think it would be bad strategically to ask either a healer or a tank to do that.
I would actually probably agree that raid leading while a healer would probably not be the best idea. While it is a very good position to get a good overview of exactly what everybody's doing and what everybody's doing right and wrong, it takes way too much concentration to actually shout out instructions while doing. Even though I might be doing it anyway, it's usually not in a very nice manner. So,
Well, see, that's the thing. I find it interesting that the statement is, for you at least, and there might be other people out there who would disagree with both what the Hive has said, even though I agree with it, and what you have said on this, Ms. That, you should actually be something like a ranged DPS if you want to be a raid lead because you'll have more situational awareness. You'll be able to do a quote unquote rotation a lot more steadily than, say, what the healers have to do, which could depend entirely on if that, one DPS decided to accidentally stand in a cleave or not. But there is a certain amount of focus that has to go into healing. And
But actually, it's one more thing than that. I will agree there's a level of focus to do anything to a high enough level. There are many DPS perhaps that don't display that level of focus. I would argue they're wrong and they should do, but we'll get to that when we get to that particular edition of the Trinity show. And I'm
lucky
looking
for
forward
us,
to
it's the
that.
last one. Tanking is next.
However, the point is actually this to me. I can choose to spend some focus elsewhere, do a little bit less DPS, and the impact in a raid environment is measured and controllable. If you're running, say, 4 healers or 1 tank, you don't have that freedom of choice.
I agree with that.
mm-hmm.
So
But I think that's
I could argue that you should have the focus anyway, but you have more flexibility as DPS.
that's the thing. I would agree with that statement. I just find it interesting because of how many times I have witnessed raids either that I've witnessed on YouTube. I am lucky in the fact that I've never had to participate in one of these things because I probably would have thrown my toys out the cot and had a, crying fit. But I don't like it when people think that the healing job is easy. And there are
I would
people out there
say
who
that
believe that, and maybe because they've never done healing before, but they bring, say, 6 healers into a raid. They're like, "You guys, this should be easy for you. Just press the heal button," and you're just sitting there, and you're like, "Are you serious?"
personally, as a non-healer, I would like to turn, as I'm in Copenhagen, and slap those individuals with a large wet herring because they're idiots. No roll done well is easy.
No,
It doesn't matter
it
whether
matters for
you are
tank,
raid
DPS,
leading, whether
hybrid,
you are
nothing.
tanking, whether
Mm-mm.
you are DPSing, or whether you're healing. Now, if your role is, in fact, that you're playing the game one-handed whilst eating a pizza, well, that's easy and you're an idiot no matter what class you're playing.
I'm gonna keep my mouth shut on that because I used to have a tank during a raid who would order pizzas specifically when raids happen. It was always in Carzon too. They would order pizza, they get the pizza delivered, and all of a sudden the tank pulls went from boom, boom, boom to boom, boom, and it completely changed the rhythm because they were busy one hand tanking
Taking
I
a
don't know.
bite in between is one thing.
and
I
eating
always
pizza.
feel eating. I always feel eating pizza. I don't understand. What's
You
the problem with that?
see, I just chew bubble gum because it
Yeah,
keeps the
there
rhythm
you
for
go.
me.
I think
The
actually
rhythm
it's the
is
same
gonna
point.
get you. Sorry.
There's a difference between maintaining the right amount of focus when you need to and actually being distracted by something else so you're continually not displaying the right amount of focus. And yes, we all eat pizza while we do stuff, but some of us pay attention and take bites in between.
Well, see, I think the greatest thing I think I ever did was something along the lines of, in the middle of a raid, BRB earthquake.
That's a good one.
I don't think that's a good reason to go AFK. You
Well, see,
should have just dealt with it.
that's the thing. I was debating whether I should have gone AFK. My husband's all, "Oh my gosh, that's an earthquake." I'm like, "Is that what one feels like?" He's like, "Yeah." I said, "Okay." So I made certain that everybody knew that I was going AFK because of an earthquake.
Oh, you went AFK? I thought you just switched to wireless at that point.
I didn't have wireless headphones at the time.
I live in Tornado Alley in the United States, and I healed through a tornado. Come on, you
Now
can.
that actually is rather good. So I think that gives us our closing question. Hi, for you. And other than perhaps the one you've touched on already, because after all, we wouldn't want another thing to be ahead of the birth of your kith and kin. Um, but what is the greatest story that you can come up with as a healer that you have experienced? What is
Yes.
the healing moment that sticks in your memory?
Yes. The healing moment that really sticks in my memory, I actually wrote an article for MMOBuff just last week that Pseudo ran for me. And it actually is what kind of cemented my role as healer in all future MMOs. I was playing EverQuest, the original EverQuest, with some of my friends. One of them was a healer, or I was the healer. One of them was a tank, and the other three were DPS. And we pulled one too many. Our DPS range pulled one too many enemies. I believe they were kobolds at the time. And so our tank friend says, "Okay, everybody run. We're gonna die." And if you remember the original EverQuest, dying was a major deal. You had to make a corpse run. You had to try to get back to your corpse in time, and we were pretty deep into a dungeon. So it was going to be a big deal if we died. So he said, "Run, I'll take it, I'll die. That way only one of us dies." And so everybody starts making a run for it, including me. The tank stays behind to try to take as much damage as he can to give us enough time to get away. And finally he decides to make a break for it when we all get to the entrance. And I turn back, and I said, "You know what, I'm not going to let him die. That's not what the healer does." So I run back, I throw him a quick flash heal just to keep him up and running, and keep throwing him small heals along the way, running right next to him, trying to make sure I don't pull aggro so I don't get myself killed, because, let's face it, I'm more important. And sure enough, we both make it out. And it was just one of those moments of, I can't believe that worked out. That was so awesome. And that was my greatest healing moment. It's what sticks with me every time I think about, this is why I heal, is to help people and make sure they survive. And they don't have a bad experience, because there's nothing worse in MMOs than dying. Unless,
See, I have to agree. There is something to that. For me, mine always seems to come about when I'm teaching a new tank. Because I had this thing back before I joined Enigma, the guild that I was running. You know, we had to train people because not everybody shows up into a game knowing what they're supposed to do. And I don't know if you guys remember the Arcanite Crypts, Arcanite Downs, or right, the Crypts thing in Arkandon in Burning Crusade, where they had the mind controllers, the ghosts, and they could summon, and it was just this cluster of like, oh my gosh. And we were doing it on heroic and teaching a tank how to tank for the very first time. They've never really tanked before. They were always just DPS, and they're like, I'm going to give this a go. Let's do this. And consistently, we did that one because, one, it was difficult. Two, it forced people to pay attention and be aware of everything that's going on because when they do the summoners that could mind control, your group could be destroyed. Now, this is obviously before we had pro gear, so the challenge was still there. But every single time we made it through a fight, and the tank just kept getting better and better because they realized that their health was dropping more and more and more because I was pausing to do the CC on all the things, you know, because I was a priest at the time, so I could actually help out with chains. But watching them get to the point where they stopped needing me and I could actually DPS in a heroic instead of healing them because they got a rotation down that actually mitigated the damage as it was coming into spike. So getting to the point where I was no longer needed repeatedly made me happy. And that's when I craved the raids because that's when I knew I was needed. But I liked the training of it, of them knowing they were secure in my hands. They weren't going to die. So they were able to try new things. But after that, once they got comfortable and they no longer needed me, it was like, yes, you have learned.
So that really, I think, gives us our rundown of the healing part of the Trinity, or at least perhaps a quick taste. Hopefully some people that haven't really delved into the healer archetype might now want to do so. Let us know. I'm quite sure people will have questions, and on a crossing of the time streams in a moment, Pseudo and hopefully Hive will be able to answer them on the channel. But with that, while we've got you here, Hive, where can people find you? We know you do some great videos, so let's make sure people get a chance to take a look at them.
Yes, if you want to take a look at my absolutely crazy videos that have absolutely no sense of seriousness about them, you can go to youtube.com/TheHiveLeader, and that's where I'll be. And you can also find my crazy thoughts on Twitter. I'm TheHiveLeader there as well.
It's right there.
Fantastic.
You can see it.
Hive, thank you oh so much for joining us. Pseudo, I'm going to delve back into the deeps of Copenhagen and leave you to wrap things up.
Yes, and this is me saying hello to my future self. Tell people about the contest. Don't forget that. Remind people about the awesomeness that's coming up and make certain to give that special link. Secrets for my future self. Hi.
See you, folks.
Adios.
You and on.
And hello, future self from the past. God, that was really weird. That was like surreal for me. Bye, past me. Hi, future me. Hi, me of the moment. Anyway, hopefully you guys really enjoyed the in-depth talk that we got into with healing. As I noticed with many of you in the chat, there were a lot of you who agreed with some of the things the Hive and I said. There were some of you who didn't agree with some of the things that we said. The reality is, it's personal. It makes a difference whether you are playing DPS, whether you are playing a tank, or whether you are healing. Every role that you take on within a game is personal, especially in a massive multiplayer environment. But yes, that is pretty much the big meat of our show. Can you see why I was like, I need to keep the news short? So yes, the notes to myself. Everyone, please remember that we do have a contest going on. Find your favorite moments in YouTube. Make certain that you are subscribed to our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/MMOBuff, and fill out the form that you find on our website, letting us know what your top 3 moments were. Your most insightful comment, the most interesting discussion, and the funniest moment. We've had quite a few, including one from the Hive this evening. Hint, hint, Aiko. Hint, hint. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and disappear, at least off of this thing. I will stick around and chat with some people. As a reminder, we do have a Reddit. We are /r/MMOBuff, and that is where you are going to find the link to the NSA documents about video games. And I beg, humbly, for you all to get involved in the conversation about that, because it's kind of mind-boggling, just to the extreme. And some of the statements they make seem to be a little far-fetched for my own liking. Also, remember, Wednesday, top draw, we're building stuff. Mizpah's not allowed. Sorry, Miz. I know that you are possibly half watching the stream, half working. Wednesday, you're not allowed to show up. There's a reason for it. But since you're here, I can't tell you. But everyone else who was here earlier knows what we're doing. So, yes. Wednesday, I'll see everybody there for top draw. Friday, we're going to be going into Redactineer, or the Engineer. And we'll keep my fingers crossed that we'll be able to pull like a whole collection of us together, and it won't just be like one or two of us. Fingers crossed. But hey, you know, life does take some twisty turns for us all. On that note, though, I will pretty much be shutting it down here and then coming back to speak with you, lovely people. So this is Pseudo saying Toodle Pip from MMOBuff, and hopefully you really enjoyed the Hive Leader's discussion with Mizpah and myself about healing. Next week, we delve into tanks. And that is your lesson for today.